How to Fix Siren Boss Freeze in Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Welcome back to Teknobalta. Today, we are tackling a critical issue in Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, where the game completely freezes right after defeating the second Axon, the Siren boss. Specifically, this hard crash happens exactly during the cinematic scene where Lune climbs the Siren. Our team at Teknobalta analyzed this frustrating error, and we confirmed a reliable sequence of steps to get you past this roadblock. First, our testing showed that forcing an older graphics API significantly improves stability during this specific transition. You need to open your Steam library, right-click the game to access its properties, and type DX11 into the Launch Options box. This forces the game to compile shaders differently and bypasses the modern rendering bottleneck causing the freeze. Next, the game engine seems to desynchronize if the frame rate spikes during the cinematic loading phase. We highly recommend going into the in-game display settings and capping your maximum FPS strictly to 60. Keeping the frame rate locked prevents the sudden processing spikes that trigger the crash at the end of the fight. Modern rendering tools are fantastic, but they introduce interpolation errors during abrupt scene transitions. You must navigate to the graphics menu and completely turn off Frame Generation, also known as FG. This ensures the engine only draws actual frames and prevents the rendering queue from overflowing during the boss defeat sequence. Similar to Frame Generation, aggressive upscaling can miscalculate the particle effects when Lune begins the climbing animation. We verified that you need to disable DLSS or any other upscaling method you have active before dealing the final blow. Running the game at native resolution temporarily removes the computational overhead, causing the lockup. One of the most effective workarounds our team discovered involves changing how the game interacts with the Windows Desktop Manager. Simply switch the game from full screen or borderless to standard windowed mode just before the boss fight concludes. This allows the operating system to handle the memory allocation differently, allowing the problematic cutscene to play smoothly. It is important to note that these restrictive settings are only necessary for this exact progression blocker. Once you successfully pass the scene where Lune climbs the Siren and the game saves, you can safely revert all these adjustments. You are free to switch back to your preferred rendering API, uncap your frame rate, and turn DLSS back on for the remainder of your playthrough. If the temporary graphics tweaks do not immediately resolve the issue, corrupted cinematic files might be the culprit. Open Steam, navigate to the Local Files section of the game, and execute an integrity verification scan. This process will re-download any missing or broken video assets that might be failing to load in the background. Outdated display drivers frequently cause hard freezes during heavy post-processing sequences in modern rendering engines. Head over to the official NVIDIA or AMD website and download the absolute latest driver package for your specific graphics card. Performing a clean installation of these drivers ensures no leftover registry keys are interfering with the game pipeline. Third-party overlays hook directly into the game's rendering process and often conflict with cinematic triggers. We advise disabling the Steam overlay, Discord in-game overlay, and the GeForce Experience share feature entirely. Removing these software hooks frees up critical video memory and prevents rendering conflicts during the transition. Sometimes, an old or corrupted shader cache file forces the game into an infinite loop when loading new environments. Use the Windows Disk Cleanup tool, select your primary system drive, and clear out the DirectX Shader Cache completely. The game will rebuild these cache files cleanly upon the next launch, often eliminating the freeze entirely. High volumetric fog and shadow resolutions put massive stress on the memory controller during complex boss death animations. Temporarily lower all shadow and fog quality settings to their absolute minimum values before the fight ends. Less memory stress translates to a much smoother handoff between the active gameplay and the pre-rendered cinematic. Windows might throttle your processor right at the critical moment if your power settings are conservative. Open the Windows Control Panel, navigate to Power Options, and select the High Performance profile. This ensures your processor maintains maximum clock speeds to handle the sudden burst of data when the next scene loads. The game executable may be failing to write the autosave data properly, causing a logic lockup. Locate the main game executable file in your installation directory, right-click it, and set it to always run as an administrator. This grants the game elevated permissions to write necessary temporary files without Windows Defender blocking the action. The built-in Windows full-screen optimizations feature can occasionally disrupt borderless window transitions. In the same Properties menu for the game executable, navigate to the Compatibility tab and check the box to disable full-screen optimizations. This hands total display control back to the game engine rather than the desktop manager. Overly aggressive antivirus software might quarantine the specific memory sector the game is trying to access for the cutscene. Open Windows Security and add the entire game installation folder to your list of active exclusions. This stops real-time protection scans from interrupting the heavy file streaming required for the Siren aftermath. Multi-monitor setups can confuse the primary display output when the game quickly switches rendering contexts. Try physically unplugging any secondary monitors from your graphics card until you pass the problematic cutscene. Focusing all graphics resources onto a single display pipeline reduces the chance of a synchronization crash. If your system runs out of physical memory during the transition, it relies on the Windows page file, which might be too small. Access your advanced system settings and manually increase the virtual memory allocation on your fastest solid-state drive. A larger buffer ensures the game has plenty of overflow space to load the massive environment textures. Background applications and startup services often quietly consume processing power and cause micro-stutters that lead to full crashes. Perform a clean boot in Windows by disabling all non-Microsoft services in the System Configuration menu. Restarting your machine in this stripped-down state guarantees maximum hardware availability for the game. Critical runtime libraries required by modern rendering engines are frequently updated through standard operating system patches. Check the Windows Update menu and install any pending cumulative updates or optional driver packages. Ensuring your base operating system is flawless prevents low-level architectural conflicts. Factory overclocked graphics cards can become unstable during the sudden voltage spikes associated with heavy cinematic loading. Use an overclocking tool to slightly lower your core clock speed and power limit by a small margin. This minor reduction guarantees rock-solid stability during the most demanding engine transitions. Don't forget to follow Teknobalta for more.